Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Proper Variant and this is Dev Diary number 124 for CK3. This one is about celebrating good times, come on. This one in particular is about the grand wedding and some other rather minor sort of events that you can now do in the scope of proper activities as well. For example, meeting the peers, the grand rite, and I believe I'm missing one, I think it's Blots. These all are now available in this format, but the grand wedding of course is the most extravagant one because that one is exclusive to the Tours and Tournaments DLC. This Dev Diary is very interesting. There are some nuances to this, but I think in general there shouldn't be too much in here that will surprise you. Let's just jump into this. Of weddings, feasts, and other merrymaking. You are hereby invited to Duchess Matilda's grand wedding. Duchess Matilda, we all know her, she is the poster lady, I guess, when it comes to Italy. To the vile Berthold, I love that she starts the letter with this one. I'm delighted to invite you to celebrate the marriage of Prince Olaf of Denmark and I in Firenze. Signed, Duchess Matilda of Tuscany. So this is a grand wedding, and it's slightly different from a normal wedding, or rather in how you trigger it, because you have to promise it. This also, I assume, makes it so that you can marry above your station if you are indeed promising this at a betrothal. Now, this actual Dev Diary was written by Arisek. Arisek, okay? Bloody weddings, feasts, grand blots, grand rites, and playdates. We have a packed day filled with exciting activities, so let's get started. Royal weddings in the Middle Ages were already a huge deal. Weddings between aristocratic families were, after all, political events of a mostly public nature. So far, weddings in CK3 and even before that in CK2 were represented by a simple interaction, clean and effective, but hardly apt to represent the magnificence, the expenses and the ramifications of such an event. While the simple interactions is still available and doing its job, we have also decided to give the player the possibility to choose a more immersive and in-depth experience of what a wedding celebration could look like in the world of medieval nobility. I put the stress on immersive and in-depth to underline the two sides of the coin. Immersion relates to role-playing, since flavor is offered aplenty, while depth calls for new challenges, which we can summarize as great rewards come to those who are daring, and not too stingy. So this is a very interesting topic. We've been discussing this, I think, over the last couple of weeks when it comes to roleplay and immersion versus mechanics and depth. Now, is this adding a mechanic, akin to, for example, a different government type? Obviously not. But the way you can now take a different look at the actual sort of marriage matches that you can get, because you can organize this grand wedding in particular, and you can participate, and then during the event, of course, sort of fulfill the goals that you might have as well. You're going to see this as well. The intents here yet again play a big role, and a very positive one. There is definitely a tactical, sort of strategic goal behind this entire thing. A grand wedding is a type of grand activity exclusively unlocked by the Tours and Tournaments expansion. Contrary to other activities introduced so far, however, grand weddings are not immediately and always available. When you have the money, you can host a tournament, you can go on a grand tour, if at least I think your account, right? So basically whenever you want, but grand weddings are not like that. In fact, they can only be organized for specific betrothed couples to which a grand wedding has been promised at the time of the betrothal. I can already see you jumping in your seats. Wait, betrothed? Is it only for children? No, I can confirm that adults can now be betrothed too. I like this. I think that is actually pretty neat. There's a lot of potential there. I know that some modders already looked at this and said, man, being able to have adult folks be betrothed is really useful for what we're doing right here, so I think this is a good change in general. But it also does mean if you start as an adult person, if you want the benefits of promising a grand wedding, which means a better match, you can do this with your character rather than wait for example, your children. When proposing a marriage, you will find a checkbox to add a grand wedding clause to it. Valid matches include your own marriage and those of your relatives, as long as your spouse candidate is said to be the dominant side in the couple, so that means the one whose dynasty the kids will belong to. Please ignore the costs in this and following screenshots, it won't be that cheap. In the last couple of videos, I have repeatedly said this price and this reward seems too extreme, it's too massive. Obviously, this means I'm going to ignore this. Now, if I see any numbers that don't seem right, I'm just going to say, hey, work in progress, right? This right here is arrange a marriage, and then you can toggle on the grand wedding promise. Promise to organize a grand wedding, making the marriage offer more likely to be accepted. I wonder what the benefit is. So this is an average cost of 400. I can already tell you, and we're going to see this as we go through the Dev Diary, there is a penalty if you fail to go through with the grand wedding. If you just say, I can't host this, I don't have the money. Which makes this, unless you have the money, a bit of a gamble, but it will make it so that you doubtlessly can make a better match. I would guess maybe plus 20, maybe plus 50. I don't think it will be much higher, maybe plus 100, but that seems insane. Who knows what sort of gap you can bridge here, but clearly this is intended so that you can sort of make people marry you even if originally they would not be in favor of it. If both spouses are adults, you have 3 years to fulfill your promise or there will be serious consequences. A grand wedding is a grandiose and prestigious event, so offering to host one for a spouse will immediately increase their acceptance, perhaps even allowing a character to marry above their station. However, this comes with a catch. Promising a grand wedding is a serious business. It is a diplomatic bonding agreement in which the reputation of a whole family is at stake, and the validity of the betrothal and connected alliance depends on this promise being kept. From the moment the wedding can be organized, the other party will be patient for 3 years. Breaking the betrothal or failing to organize the grand wedding in the set time will invalidate the betrothal, hurt your reputation, and massively annoy the other party. I already know that in the future, in a roleplay playthrough, I will promise a grand wedding, I will fail to adhere it, and it will create a family feud that I'm very much looking forward to, and not to be confused with the hit TV show. Right, so this is it right here. Betrothed can marry in grand wedding. You can now organize a grand wedding for the betrothed Prince Sven Svensson of Denmark and yourself. While you can still break the betrothal, it is generally best to honor your promise, as there will be serious consequences otherwise. You have 3 years to fulfill your promise. It is quite interesting. I hope that you can still break the betrothal before they are adult without any major penalties, although I'm not actually quite certain there. It should definitely be a different penalty from sort of the normal bond of a normal betrothal, right? It should be a harsher penalty if you promised a grand elaborate wedding, and of course the connection between your families that comes with that. Now this right here is the consequence. Grand wedding, betrothal expired. Time has been running away from me. I thought I still had time to organize a proper grand wedding, but a furious letter from Sven reminds me that his patience has run thin, and my time has run out. Having failed to organize the wedding between myself and Sven in the amount of time agreed, the betrothal is now considered void. And then right down here we have, you break the betrothal, your alliance is broken, so you have an alliance before you marry, obviously this is done via the betrothal, right? Then you lose 1 level of fame, you spend 750 prestige, Sven loses 50 opinion, the king loses 50 opinion, and you gain a house feud. So this actually creates a house feud. I'm really looking forward towards this from a roleplay perspective. I will say, I wish that this actually had negative repercussions on our house in general, right? Because you can see this obviously creates a house feud, you get a rival, so there is some tension there, but the actual levels of fame, the level of prestige, all of these are personal values. I do think you kind of disgrace your house, right? I think the penalties here could even be steeper, no question about it. Offering a grand wedding is therefore a risky commitment, and you might reasonably wonder if the increased acceptance alone is worth it. It probably wouldn't be, which is why promising a grand wedding is only the first step. The next step is organizing the activity itself. Now that we have promised a grand wedding, the activity is available from the activity menu, but can also be easily accessed from a top screen notification. So, let me analyze the screen real quick. I assume that this is the grand tour and the grand tournament. I would be very surprised if feasts, hunts, and pilgrimages were shown up here. I doubt it, right? Then this right here is the grand wedding, so that gets a genuinely special icon, because obviously it is time-based, it is based on just very special occasions. It's not the same as a grand tour and a grand tournament in comparison. Host a grand wedding. A grandiose celebration of the union of a couple. However, this is not just a wedding ceremony, it's a public show of influence and a social event where the nobility gather to practice the arts of diplomacy, seduction, and murder, or to share a drink with friends. Anticipated rewards from hosting a grand wedding activity. The spouses get married. Makes perfect sense. You get prestige, you get guest opinion, you get courtly vassal opinion, you may gain the eager reveler trait, because this is basically like a feast, right? You may lose stress, and you may gain magnificent host or gracious host. I really wonder what those actually are in terms of modifiers, but yeah, there is obviously more to it than just getting married. There's a lot more going into it. Since only one grand wedding can be promised by the same person at the same time, the setter view comes with the spouses pre-selected. Handy. Yeah, there's not too much choice, right? This is the classic interface. We don't need to take a look at this again. We've already done this. Completely fine. Then right here we got the two spouses. We got the activity options. We're going to see more on that in a second. The prices are all work in progress. Don't worry about it. And then we have the very classic intent. We're going to hold this in Firenze. The activity setup is pretty simple and similar to other activities. From this interface, you can select where you want to host the wedding, set your travel up if needed, choose your intent, invite your guests. For ease of access, the most obvious choices, such as the spouses' families, are pre-selected, and change the options. Like in the other activities, intents steer the events that will happen to your character, or unveil specific ways to react to them. Wedding intents include some classic hobbies of CK3 characters, such as plotting murders and seductions, but also some new and exclusive intents, diplomacy and matchmaking. Can you guess what they do? So we will be getting both of these explained, so I'm not going to waste any time by sort of hypothesizing what is going on there. But yeah, you have very specific intents here, and I can only, one more time, really applaud the idea of the intent system. The fact that you can have the same event 15 times and only 3 times each will the intents match up, right? Because you will have recreation 3 times, murder, and so on and so forth. You're looking at a situation where the repetition that sets in very early in other systems should, I say should, because who knows, set in later. And if that is the case, this intent system needs to be implemented more. We actually talked about it on the Discord just today, actually, that I feel fairly lukewarm when it comes to the tournaments. So don't get me wrong here, I think the tournaments look really good, I think it's really unique, and I think there's a lot going on there. But the focus of the tournaments is very clearly, well, the actual competitions, right? Which means every competition, once you've seen them all, are basically the same. I hope that they are different enough from one another, but I would be doubtful that you see all of the different tournament types in one playthrough, whereas with the intent, you might see different intents every playthrough, right? Like, there's a chance that you always do something else during these events. The tournaments are sort of streamlined because they all fall into the competition category, whereas with the Grand Wedding, I have the feeling that it should be quite nice because you can say, hey, you know what, this time I'm going to murder somebody, I'm going to try to murder somebody, I'm going to try to make a match, I'm going to try to get somebody else married, right? I'm going to try to create a pact, all that sort of stuff. And I think that is incredibly interesting because it's just so flexible, right? Well, I'm not sure about the tournaments. I hope that they are more fun than I'm currently anticipating. But I will tell you that I'm a huge fan of these intents, and as we're looking at them, I mean, this is just such a good feature. Let's indeed see what they do. Matchmaking is a flavorful bit of innocent meddling into an unmarried relative's life. After all, what better occasion than a wedding to find a worthy spouse, or maybe a very unworthy one, for your younger brother who has been feeling so lonely. However, weddings are not all about casual socialization and careless flirting. As mentioned at the beginning of this dev diary, weddings are also political events in which the nobility of a country and their peers from foreign lands sit at the same table and mingle. Intrigue may hide behind every corner, but it's also the perfect occasion to conduct some official diplomacy. This is where the diplomacy intent fits in. By picking this intent, you will choose a guest and be offered occasions to improve their opinion of you, gain hooks on them, even a temporary strong hook on your liege, a very rare opportunity in-game that is very powerful, gain an alliance without the usual requirements, a marriage or a special perk, or even make a more convincing case for subjugation. Honestly, all of these are really interesting, and I like the idea. And this is why I keep praising the intent so much. I like the idea that I have this one intent, which already is a selection out of, how many are there? Out of 5 intents, right? Out of, 5 intents. You already make a selection there, which brings you into a different pool of events. But on top of that, it's clearly also geared towards a liege, a different independent ruler, a ruler within your realm, that sort of stuff. And I think that is massively important. Again, when we look at Royal Court, you don't have any choice over anything, but even if you look at the tournaments, it's very easy to very clear to me, at the very least, that when you look at tournaments, you will always at some point streamline yourself into the competition, and a melee is a melee is a melee. It's not like that's gonna change, right? There's not a different experience, it's fundamentally the same. You can sabotage others and so on. I will say, this intent, having all these different angles on different people depending on who you are targeting, is a huge boon. I cannot stress this enough. I need as many systems like this in the game because I think this is incredibly promising when it comes to variety. Options too are not just flavorful bits you can toy around with for immersion. They can make your wedding considerably more or less expensive, with immediate repercussions not only on the appearance of some events, but mostly on what you can expect to gain from hosting the Grand Wedding. That's pretty classic. I think that is very congruent with everything that we've seen with these events. You know, for example, tournaments, depending on how much you invest, the prizes will of course be better, will increase, and then what you get out of it is better. So yeah, no surprise right there. For instance, entertainment will give you more prestige, food will make an impression on your guests, and the venue will increase your renown. Simply put, the more you spend, the more bonuses you can gain back, although not all your vassals will be impressed by the same things. Right, troubadours and exotic fiends, I assume that this is related again to the type of vassal, right? Troubadours and exotic fiends, that is 180 bucks. Eager reveler trait experience, glory hound and courtly vassals will gain more opinion of you. Yeah, there you go, that is the vassal type right there. And increased prestige gain. Yeah, nothing too surprising here. Zoom view of a selected, yeah, who cares? This makes perfect sense. The activity options I think are fine, but I don't think that they will add the variety. It's rather just the payout, of course. It's basically you sort of transferring gold into piety, renown, prestige, and so on. Now that everything is ready, let's get the show started. It's my big day, and you can't ruin it. Activity interface with traveling spouses, you can see right here. I love this. I love this. This horse, Sven. He looks so dead inside. This man has died 1,000 deaths. He's riding. Obviously, he starts in Shellin, so this is at the very start of the journey. You're waiting on activity guests, 6 remaining, 8 months until it begins. So, wow, okay, I actually gotta say, I assume that it's taking 8 months because Sven is coming all the way from Denmark. But man, I gotta tell you, waiting 8 months in this screen, that is a long time. Now, I only noticed this now, I have to admit. I didn't notice this earlier. And I'm not sure how much can you do with this screen, right? Like, if this screen exists, can you still, like... I guess if you declared war, it would probably shut down the activity. But, like, man, 8 months? That's a long time of waiting. That's a lot of waiting you might be doing between events here. But then again, this is a very long journey. Let's hope that 8 months is not the standard, of course, for these sort of grand activities. When the activity starts, you and your guests start traveling towards the activity location. In the activity view, you can keep track of where your character and the spouses are at any point. Once both spouses have arrived at the wedding venue, you can see an overview of the ongoing pre-celebration party. Look at this merry bunch having the time of their lives. You might also notice that the bride has put on her best flower crown, and the groom has a new wedding crown too. They are all ready for the celebration. Right, this is not the marriage of our dear Matilda. This is the Emperor marrying some random lady, I think, Ricciarda Contarini, who comes, I assume, Serene Doge Domenico II, I assume Venice, right? Alright, anyway, we're marrying apparently into Venice, into a merchant family. How disgusting. That's a nice asset. That's nothing wrong with that. You can see this is outside. They're going to address this in a second. Actually, really cool historical knowledge right there. 53 days until it begins. I'm so curious. It's 1067. Have they been waiting here for 1.5 years? That can't be true, right? Because the game starts in 1066. That can't be true. Well, anyway, he has a new crown. I like this crown. That is a really cool crown. I want more unique artifacts like that, honestly. Finally, it's time to start. Grand wedding ceremony starts. It always feels amazing, and sorry, the images here are a bit low quality. I asked others, for them they are also low quality, so that's just the way they are. Somebody has a tiny screen resolution when they took these screenshots, I think. It always feels amazing when you have been planning for something for so long and spent so much money on it, and then it's finally there. Everything is ready. The decorations are in place, the guests are mingling, and servants scurry around with loaded dishes. I am pacing around in excitement and nervousness when my future spouse, Mahila La Taramo, appears, radiant in her finest attire. We're ready to begin, right? We have the goal recreation right here. That's us. We're doing this. We are the... I want to say that's Khorasan. I believe that is Khorasan. And we are hosting this grand activity while we are at war. Oh, that is so interesting. And somebody has Yes Man activated here, but okay, be that as it may. While we're at war. Interesting. I wonder whether it's permitted or not. It doesn't feel like it should be, right? Weddings have 3 phases. The first phase is the ceremony, which is a less formal event than we are used to thinking in modern times. While the spouses are mostly busy in the required rituals, the guests mingle, get distracted, and occasionally get up some mayhem. Wedding, new family. Wedding ceremonies are always long, pretty boring, and mostly uneventful, except when a commotion starts somewhere behind me. I have something to say. Yavu Nasri's familiar voice booms from inside the crowd. Is this the very best you could replace my mother, Maharani Avaladevi, with? Out of the corner of my eye, I spot Avaladevi freezing in surprise. Oh, she's raising her hand. She's a school child. Okay. Stop this nonsense now, or I know, darling, it's hard for us all. Interesting. Did she die? Is she... No, that's her, right? The very best you could replace my mother with? But she's still alive. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't... Oh! Wait, what? No. Now I'm double confused. So we're remarrying? But she's here. Okay, you know what? You tell me, okay? Maybe I'm misunderstanding that event. Be that as it may. For most of the Western Middle Ages, a wedding was considered religious and valid independently from where it was celebrated, and it would rarely take place inside a religious building. Rulers' weddings, which were big political and public events, were much more likely to take place in the open space in front of a church, rather than inside of it, which is the background we have chosen. From what we have been able to backdate, traditional Hindu or Muslim weddings don't belong in religious buildings either. For the Indian background, we have chosen a rendition of the traditional mandap, a canopy made of 4 wooden pillars supporting a frame decorated with leaves and flowers. And a central position is reserved to the holy fire, which plays a fundamental role in Hindu wedding rituals, although the rebellious daughter above is standing exactly in front of it. I'm still confused about this event. The fire, I assume, is right here or right there. You know, God bless. Good luck, okay, with your dead mother or something. For Muslim weddings, instead, we preferred a more enclosed space, reminiscent of a household's courtyard, richly decorated with carpets and veils. In Christian tradition, for the longest time, a religious figure was not required to validate a wedding, and if members of the clergy were involved, their function was something in between bearing witness and giving a special blessing. Considering the social weight of royal weddings, we generally try to find a valid religious character to bless your union. After all, what could look more prestigious and attest more to your piety than inviting the Pope and having him bless your wedding personally? However, the spouses can also receive a lay blessing from the host if they are important enough, or in religions with lay clergy. It might come as a surprise, considering the long history of arranged political and even forced marriages. But it was generally agreed throughout the Middle Ages that the only real requirement for a marriage to be valid was the consent of the spouses. How that consent was obtained was not investigated, though. Therefore, the ceremony culminates and concludes with a formal assent to the union from the spouses. I'll let you find out by yourselves what happens if you say I don't. Grand wedding, the wedding ceremony, we are back here with Contarini. Most of the ceremony has now run its course. As I stand face to face with my bride for our formal consent to the marriage, I shiver once again, trying to gauge from her expression if this broken body disgusts her, wow, and will stand in the way of our happiness. Then it's my turn to speak. Do I want to spend the rest of my life with Ricciarda? We have, I believe, the ecumenical patriarch right here, right? I do, or I don't. I assume you host this event, and then you say I don't. I would hope that it basically embarrasses her, that it costs you some prestige as well, but for other reasons, right? And maybe starts a house feud. I mean, this is a huge embarrassment as well. I don't think any religious consequences should happen. Saying no, it's like, you know, that's not in breach of anything. I really do like the fact, by the way, that they actually researched how these wedding ceremonies occurred, because the way we envision it today is largely tainted by pop culture, largely tainted by our very own sort of experiences and expectations. If you are religious, it is extremely likely that you will get married in a church rather than in front of it and then have an event, you know, for example, a mass afterwards. Very, very interesting that they took the detail here and really implemented it in this way. You can see that we are in front of the church. Big, big fan. I think that is pretty cool. If you say I do, you're now officially married, congratulations. However, the day is still long, as anyone who has at any point gotten married can testify. The second phase is called the banquet, and it's basically a wedding reception. Offering and partaking luxurious meals with your guests is an almost universally understood way of celebrating a big event. Banquets, more often after the ceremony, but in some cultures even before it, have naturally long accompanied weddings, and the celebrations could last for days. Wedding banquets are quite similar to feasts, as in liberal amounts of foods and drinks are served to the undying delight of gluttonous and drunkard characters. However, banquets are also an eminently social moment, ideal to advance your political, seductive or murderous goals. It is also the perfect time to show off the entertainment that you have paid for during the activity's setup, to wow your guests with dazzling decorations, and to ensure everything proceeds as planned thanks to a fleet of diligent servants. Right, grand wedding and another thing. Every feast, there's always one. Every single feast. One long-winded, ill-born pissant cornering people who just will not be silent. This time it's Kurum Pruhoda, and he has got no patience for any subject. As soon as I try to engage on one topic, we're on to the next, with nary a thread of connection between. Just an eternal barrage of detached thoughts forever. I am going to scream. I love this guy. This look on his face. Yeah, I hate that guy already. Gently exit the conversation, shut up, that's very interesting, or grin and bear it. None of these seem to be giving stress, but okay, quite interesting. So basically we are interacting with people as it should be. Finally, the last phase is the wedding night. As you can imagine, this phase plays quite differently for the spouses and the guests. For the guests, it is almost an extension of the party, where they can socialize, abscond to a secluded room, or enjoy the slow quieting of the venue in a drunken stupor. Or maybe not so quietly. A meeting of houses. With the newlyweds retired for the evening, the braziers are lit, the flagons filled, and musicians rallied for festivities long into the night. Hours later, I found myself looking hazily down my goblet at Count Benno, father of the bride, who has just almost choked on his wine in mirth. Yeah, Count Benno, and the heir to the emperor, to the empire of the Eastern Romans. That's pretty wild, okay? He slurs, I admit, your son is a fine match for my daughter. Happy may they be. And we can say, this reminds me, I need your opinion. I assume the personal connection right here. More ale, more, I assume just eager reveler, right? We are drunkard anyway. And then we must keep in contact, we are family now. This might also be a personal relationship, or it might be an alliance? you know, because this is now, of course, a direct family connection, but then again, he's the father, they probably already have an alliance. Well, anyway, the spouses instead must consummate their marriage, therefore the scene moves to the bedchamber, and we have some gorgeous new art for the room, by the way, where awkwardness, wholesomeness, accidents, and even murder can happen for those who are bold enough. Right, obviously this is a pivotal moment and giving you many different choices. Really cool idea right there. As the banquet reached its climax, La Taramo's growing anxiety over the imminent bedding ceremony was clear. My new wife turns to me as the procession sets off to our chambers, pleading, "Please, can't we do this without this?" Over the hollering and drumming. "Let's have the room to ourselves. Come, dear, it will be alright, or don't be silly, it's tradition." Right, so obviously this is a very public event leading them into the bedchamber right there. And she doesn't feel like it. I see two religious leaders actually, right? Interesting. I'm still confused about the mother there, but okay, let's put that aside. When all is said and done, the grand wedding finally comes to an end. The satisfied host bids the departing guests goodbye, and the newlyweds return to their new home. Everyone has gained something, depending on the options selected by the host. Prestige, opinion, renown, modifiers. After all, there's great glory in paying for organizing such a magnificent grand event, but there is also in being offered such a luxurious wedding, and even in taking part in the wedding of the century. Grand wedding, the conclusion. When, finally, the last guest leaves, I look around at the deserted venue, the food leftovers, the spilled spiced wine on the floor, the echoes of the people's laughter still lingering in the air, and feel satisfied. What an amazing day. I did a very fine job organizing it. Thank you all for coming. Okay, we were, doing some recreation, with feeling fine. This is a very default ending, I guess, because we didn't do matchmaking, we didn't do diplomacy. We just got married, which is, at the end of the day, fair enough. Now, here comes the other big topic, and you can see that I marked all these. We're going to skip most of this, but this is now the topic of the bloody wedding. The bloody wedding, on the forums and on Reddit, and I think ultimately we need to be aware of this, okay? And I say this as somebody that is without a doubt a part of the core community that thinks way more about this game than your average CK3 player. But I think we need to be aware that this is a super internal discussion. Like, we're discussing this amongst ourselves, basically. I think the vast majority of CK3 players isn't thinking about this, they're not involved about this, they don't really care. They're just like, okay, can I do something cool, though? My point here is, the bloody wedding has been a topic of contention, because people look at this and say, oh, they took this from Game of Thrones, yada, yada, yada. I will be honest with you, there's a twofold take that I have here, and I don't want to dive for too long into this, because this video will already be long enough, okay? But I think, especially the way it was presented very initially, right? Where it was basically like, oh, you can do this, by the way, in the announcement stream of tours and tournaments. I believe with every fiber in my body that the marketing team and that the devs behind CK3 are entirely aware that the bloody wedding is obviously a draw for a more casual audience, and that more casual audience is then what carries CK3 sales. That is just the fundamental reality. I think that is the way the world works, and I think that is the way the game works. Now, the complaints about, oh, weddings are sacred, you shouldn't be allowed to do this, even without taking a look at all of these, and they don't necessarily here fit the wedding, okay? Sometimes they were murdered, for example, at a feast, sometimes they were murdered, or people in real life got murdered during a travel to a wedding, but during the wedding, didn't really take place, right? At least not in this fashion. We have this other comparison that is outside of the timeline of CK3, the Black Feast, I want to say it's called, Black Supper or something, I can't remember. But that was in Scotland, it was in the EU4 period, and that one wasn't a wedding either. Now, I will tell you, I think it is absolutely misguided to take a look at this and say, oh, even if it never happened, that means it shouldn't be in the game. There are so many things that we can do in CK3 that never happened, because if you really take an in-depth sort of view on the medieval lifestyle, it's not that suited for a video game, okay? I think it is fine to take a look at this and say, would a heinous, a devious character consider doing this? And the answer here is yes. People do illegal things all the time. Breaching with your faith and with the conventions of that faith, people do it all the time, even in extremely extreme measures or in fashions. I think that's completely reasonable. What I will say, and I get that point, and it definitely is winning me over, I think we need to take a look at how much this is seen as an incredible breach of conduct and how much this is then punished. I think this is very, very important, because doing extremely terrible things is a hallmark feature of CK3, okay? but it should be adequately rewarded, right? So let's jump into this. Let's skip even the historical justification, because I'll be honest with you, man, if you needed a historical justification for doing evil things or for doing good things, then it's like, come on. We all know this is more about human nature than it is about the what exactly happened historically speaking. Historically speaking, so many things, like for example reforming your faith like we do it in CK3, just not viable. Let's take a look at this from the angle of what does it do, what do you do, what conventions do you breach, and then what's the punishment. Blah blah blah. The only person that can organize a bloody wedding is the host, but you don't need to be the spouse. As we saw above, it was a close family to the spouse that killed the groom, not the wife herself. This happened right here with Count de Castilla. This is the closest to an actual bloody wedding, but again, they did do this next to the church, not during the wedding, just, you know, in the context of a marriage. With this in mind, we wanted to offer to the player the power fantasy of ending an enemy lineage in one big consequential event, and thus we decided to make the punishments for using it equally consequential. It's not every day that you try to end a house. So, the unlocking perk for the bloody wedding is Accomplished Forger. For this, there are two reasons. One, we already used an intrigue perk for the murder feast, see below, and two, we noticed that the diplomacy tree was ranked kind of low by many players and wanted to give them something special. I get that reasoning. I'm not that sure whether it really fits that well here. I'm not against it, mind you, right? It's ultimately it's just balancing. You can shift that stuff around, it's completely fine, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't know. Does this fit 100%? Is this like a diplomacy thing to do? Maybe you need the diplomatic sort of aptitude to forge legitimate invitations, but you know, who knows? Ultimately, this is a balancing issue. It doesn't really matter what unlocks it, but just so you know, it is locked behind something. But it's not the same thing ending a completely random family than assassinating your liege. To reflect this, targeting your liege or their family in a bloody wedding will tank your prestige level by 3, as will your piety levels if by chance you target your head of faith. I actually think, so these are harsh punishments, okay? 3 levels of prestige. I would personally argue your piety level should tank regardless, okay? Breaching this sort of communion, this contract, both the honor level, which is the secular level, and then of course also the level of the holiness of the union is being breached. I would love it if this actually was even harsher. Put the piety levels, push them all the way down. You're a terrible person, you suck, okay? Obviously, just, compassionate, and calm characters are also not big fans of indiscriminate murder and will get massively stressed while trying to accomplish one. Bloody wedding. You will murder the other family. You're not organizing a wedding, you're planning a funeral. You won't be able to host a bloody grand wedding for 15 years. Targeting a liege ahead of faith will have bigger penalties. Characters with just, compassionate, and calm traits will gain stress. Makes sense so far. The activity options and intents are the same as in a regular wedding, to not arouse suspicion, and in case you decide to murder only the spouse, you can still get some greatly lowered rewards from the decoration or the food. If you wipe the entire family, however, there's nothing you can do to convince your guests of how prestigious you are. Yeah, that makes sense. The cost of organizing a bloody wedding is also significantly higher than a regular wedding, contributing to making it quite prohibitive. Of course, it will still escalate with tier, and as with most of our activities, numbers in the screenshots are not final. Perfectly fine. At the beginning of your wedding, we'll get a starting event setting the tone of the whole ceremony. Do you want to murder all of the family, just the spouse, or just the spouse during your wedding night? Only available if you're the one getting married, of course, which leads to a more subtle killing, but leaves the door open to failing in your attempts. There's only really one thought that I have on this. You should allow me to kill the other family and my family, okay? I am of the opinion that this game should let me kill everybody anywhere. It shouldn't be easy, it should be very hard in many cases. But if somebody is talking to the Pope and I am there, I should have the option, in the sense that if I organize this, I want to utilize this because any additional options are great for role players like me. Now I will say, is it balanced? Yes or no? I think this is a fun event. I don't think you can properly balance this. As it stands, you can kill the entire other family if you succeed. Do it so that I can kill everybody. Maybe I hate the whole lot. Maybe I hate my family as well. Who cares about them, right? All the guests are gathered in the yard. A wonderful sunny day. I look over at my men. The guards I so promised as the gracious host, heavily armed. Soon my preparations will come to fruition. I see Agnes arrive along with her entourage, married for just 1 day. Every member of the Wettin house must be wiped out. It's only Agnes' life that I'll take. The wedding night, a perfect occasion. So this is killing her basically in public, killing her in secret, and then I can't do this. Not here, not now. I wonder whether this just turns it into a normal marriage. Give me a fifth option. Kill everybody at the wedding. Kill everybody attending the wedding, okay? After that, the wedding progresses as usual. All the guests get the non-suspicious ceremony and gathering events, and even make it to the banquet phase with hopefully no second thoughts. However, when the banquet is about to reach its end, tragedy happens. If you haven't chosen the wedding night kill option, the murder is carried out. We have added several different texts that take into account your relationship with the victim, your personality traits, and a couple of random chances. In any case, though the framing of the whole family murder is that mercenaries interrupt the festivities, killing everyone present. In the case of the murder of only the spouse, the framing is that of a hostile agent. So obviously we don't want to give away that we did this, but realistically speaking, nobody will buy that. People will say that can't be true. That has to be a lie. This fella, you know, they were in his house, they were in his home, and yet he couldn't protect them. Something is fishy right here. Makes perfect sense. The guests are engaged in so many conversations that it's difficult to keep track of all of them. Duchess Agnes is surrounded by a group of keen courtiers, all complimenting each other. Whether the distraction is pure coincidence or fate, I cannot tell. May their heads roll across the halls they've so slandered. I signal to my servants as I bite into the saffron cakes. My men enter the hall disguised as mercenaries. The doors are locked and the music starts playing. Let the massacre begin. And there they are. That is how the murder commences. Grand wedding, do us part. So this is just a hostile agent, I assume. As the feast approaches its end, the conversations start dying out and the guests are sorted into too drunk or too tired. The ones sober enough or drunk enough now surround Duchess Agnes in a last try to win the marriage's favor. It's what must be done. One of the courtiers laughs a bit more than they should, a bit stronger. He takes out a dagger and the heart of Agnes quickly goes silent, and so do the guests. Seize him! I yell, fully knowing that he will be released the next day. A tragedy. And that's how she dies. After the murder is done, both guests and host get aftermath events, taking again into account the host's personality in relation to the victim, as well as the guests. You don't care as much if you hated the poor spouse, for example. Then we hand out the rewards for the hosts, which are more of a punishment than anything. After all, what bigger reward than murdering an entire family? Grand wedding, red dawn. The hall looks nothing like the day before. The servants have cleaned the tables, there's no music, and most of the guests have already departed. As I prepare to bid farewell to the remaining ones, I take a moment to think of Duchess Agnes. Gone. I can only hope that God forgives me. A true relief. The one problem... let's continue reading this, but I have a problem with this to a degree. If you've killed the entire family in a wedding under your protection, well, it doesn't go down well with basically anyone. It especially doesn't go down well with your head of faith, who doesn't really care whether you did it yourself or not. You violated the sanctity of marriage and the laws of hospitality, one of the most important laws in the Middle Ages. The result? Excommunication. What is more, the recent excommunication modifier is extended for 5 years, which apart from the opinion malices, prevents you from asking to be taken back until its expiration. In case your faith doesn't allow for excommunication, you lose piety levels instead. Your diplomacy is also greatly affected by whatever you try to pull here. The distrustful host modifier greatly lowers your skill, but helps you maintain a dreadful aura. Apart from that, everyone that's not particularly sadistic thinks that you are not great and lose opinion of you on top of the excommunication drops. All in all, you can eradicate a rival family, in case they all show up to the wedding of course, but you will have to face the consequences for it. Yeah, these are significant consequences. Now I will say, I wished that there were 2 elements to this, right? The first element would be that you can get away with it. I don't know, you get beaten up, you get kidnapped by your mercenaries, right? And then people think, oh man, maybe he really didn't do it. And I would like to see a feature where I can frame somebody, okay? If the world fundamentally assumes that whoever is welcoming these people under their roof is to blame if they die, why wouldn't I just send my own mercenaries? Why wouldn't I just frame them, right? Hurt everybody else, leave the host alive, boom, host is excommunicated. I would like to see those. Beyond this, let's take a look at the penalties right here. You get excommunicated, recent excommunication, you gain distrustful host. You know what? No, actually, I want to expand on this even more. You get all these penalties and that's all good and you start a house feud. We're going to see this here in a second. I want to see specific war goals just for this. I would really like to see that stuff. This is such a dramatic, this is such a massive breach of conduct that some more follow-up content would be amazing. But as it stands, if you're willing to do this, if you're willing to throw your character into that ditch of being completely sort of denounced by the church, by society, by other families, maybe even by your own family, by other guests and so on, I think this is a great, great feature. A distrustful host gives -5 diplomacy. I mean, I don't think people should ever show up again to your feast, I'm just saying, okay? But yeah, that is not all. If the victim had surviving relatives, they are not happy with this. A week later, you will receive a letter from their closer family member, their heir if they're alive, berating you for not protecting the spouse. This starts a house feud. Not only that, you become rivals with the person who sent the letter, and every close family member loses even more opinion of you, getting kind of suspicious of your intentions. A prestige hit is also warranted, as a treat. Right, to the miserable Duke of Vratislav. My dear sister was put under your protection, and this is how you guard her? My eyes are filled with tears for her loss, but in my heart there's only hatred. I shall get a retribution, one way or another. Signed, Princess Sophia of Pula. This one I'm completely fine with. I think this is really, really cool. Whether you killed them or not, it doesn't matter. You failed them, right? And so with that, yeah, a house feud. Completely welcome. I really wish that it had a bit of a similar angle, right? When it comes to the... will they actually look at you as the perpetrator? Will they know that you did it? I wish that was expanded upon a bit, but I think in general, this bloody marriage has significant consequences. It should be quite hard to pull off from the looks of it, and you might even just do it as like a less grand bloody wedding, right? Where it's just you killing, for example, your spouse in the bedding ceremony. These are all things that make this a richer experience, and the richer the murder plots are, the happier I will personally be. I don't really care for the question of, again, how holy was it? I think we breach these rules in CK3 all the time, the rules of medieval conduct. The biggest topic here, of course, is honor. Honor is infinitely more important in medieval society than how we view it in CK3, how easy it is to murder 10 people and everybody goes, hey, I still like you, you're a great dude. These things are just what happens in video games, and I welcome this. I just actually think they should have gone even further in terms of the feature implementation there. As it stands, though, I gotta tell you, Grand Wedding and Bloody Weddings, I'm a big fan of them. I think they're implemented in a really cool way, and I think the Grand Weddings in particular should make it so that the actual wedding event in itself might even lead to me already falling in love with my spouse. And the way I play the game, for example, these sort of fairly mundane activities, like interacting with your spouse, I love that stuff, because that really pulls us into the direction of who are we, right? Who is our character? Because, well, they're meant to be three-dimensional, they're meant to be pretty deep, and this definitely adds to this. The AI for Bloody Weddings is heavily weighted to not want anything to do with this. The consequences and the noble understandings that ruled over the medieval world are enough for them to not even consider the possibility. However, a particularly sadistic AI with a lot of gold to burn and an important grudge against someone may try to orchestrate something like this, bringing the world alive. I hope that there's some kind of notification, okay? Where it's like, this happened over there, like everybody died. That's important to me, okay? Feasts together with hunts are the main way the game handles stress loss right now, and we wanted to keep that in mind when revamping them. Feasts now have a clearer reward, including prestige and opinion gain, not only through events, but also based on the activity options you pick. Again, low quality screenshots, what can you do? We gain courtly vassal opinion, may gain prestige, participants may gain... attending character's opinion, we may lose stress, we may gain eager reveler experience, and rewards are increased, of course, based on the court amenities. So the fact that it's based on court amenities, I will always say yes, please, that is very nice. There are two options when hosting a feast: dish complexity, which affects the prestige gain, and number of courses, which affects the attendant opinion. Perfectly fine, right? There's nothing wrong with any of this. They put this into the existing system. They didn't really add all too much content, but that's fine. There's also something new we've added in this expansion in the form of honorary guests, as honorary guest is a special guest that will receive the toast at the center of the feast, granting them some extra prestige and opinion of you. Perfectly fine. That's it. A feast can have an honorary guest, in whose honor the celebration is held. The central part of the banquet, the toast, will grant them prestige due to this prominent position. But beware, it can also be a trap. Murder feast hosts have a tendency for killing their honorary guests. We shall see about that, okay? As for intents, we have the usual suspects: recreation, murder, seduce, and befriend, with a special option if you join as a guest: mischief. Mischief works in a very similar way as recreation, with the main focus on losing stress but allowing for more irreverent and malicious yet funny situations. When it comes to choosing a place to hold your feast, you will receive different discounts. We've seen all of this. Very nice. Nothing wrong with this. And with that, we are ready to start. The events that you will receive during the feast are some old acquaintances, and their purpose remains the same, although the effects, animations, and text have been tweaked in some cases to best reflect the new activity system. New events have also been added to account for the added intents. The rumors that have been circulating about Count Lothar Udo wanting to curry favor with Kaiser Heinrich are confirmed as he hands him a gift. My dearest liege, it is so lovely to see you. Knowing that we'd meet here, I bought you this marvelous pelt as a token of my appreciation. Kaiser Heinrich grins as he studies the animal hide. Seeing how happy he is from receiving a gift, I realize I am at risk of missing this opportunity to improve my standing with him as well. And then, of course, we can interact with this. This, perfectly reasonable. I hope that this is actually driven by this guy wanting to befriend Kaiser Heinrich, right? So that we're getting this event because we're relaxing and we're the passive person, and then a different AI said, I would like to sway this guy, and then we get this event. Because again, this would add so much to the sort of flavor towards the variety of events that we get at feasts, for example. Is there anything more jovial than a good feast? Guests throng to and fro, eating and chatting while flickering torchlight plays off every wall, light bouncing like laughter around the hall. I've always found the natural order of a banquet delightful to behold. Tables neatly laid out, social ranks quietly enforced, everyone happy and laughing and in their proper place, exactly where they should be. Sometimes it's nice to simply sit back and enjoy the little things in life. We are relaxing. This is clearly a recreation event. We have also added a bunch of activity pulse actions, random smaller events that happen throughout the activity to keep it lively. They offer a tiny bit of flavor and help the game feel more alive. You can see this right here. Your brother befriends Count Werner, your wife's diplomatic skill improves. These are tiny events that pop up at the... Yeah, this looks like this. So right here, they would pop up, they would tell you what happened, and that is it. Nothing that really will pull you out of whatever you were doing. It's just, you know, nice flavor that is going on. You can remember this as your wife, for example, becoming better at this feast. And then there's the toast. The toast is the main event of a feast, and the host can always choose whether to make a toast in honor of their special guest or, well, just honor themselves. Now toast to Duke Otto. Let us address the buffoons of the hour. I like that a lot. Or, and you're all very welcome for my hospitality. I need to know who we're bullying here, okay? I would like to bully people at my host. I would like to just hold a speech. You know what? These people over there, I hate them. I hate those fellas. Hate their guts. And with that, we reach our end. We collect the rewards, say thank you very much, and go back to accumulating stress for the next 5 years. You can see it right here. Non-courtly attending characters, the opinion goes up. You gain 150 prestige. You progress towards the eager reveler. These numbers seem fine with me, actually. The pilgrimage numbers were insane, right? It's like 2,500... piety for nothing. But this is, yeah, okay, this is very much in line with what we have from the current numbers, I think. Murder feasts. Now here we have the same thing. Murder feasts. People died during feasts, were murdered there. Listen, it happens, okay? If I want to plan it, you should let me plan it. That's my philosophy here. Make it very difficult in difficult situations. Make it very repercussion heavy in repercussion heavy situations. But let me do it. I think murder feasts are a super cool idea. To start a murder feast, you need to have the forever infamous perk from the Torturer lifestyle tree. We chose the Torturer one for thematic reasons, but also because we realized it's just not that good. The perk is fairly down the tree, also making it harder to obtain. This is a good addition, even roleplay. I'm looking at this, yeah, this fits the Torturer, right? Still not sure about diplomacy. I feel like that should also be in here or in a different intrigue tree, but everybody already does the intrigue trees too much. Who knows, okay? It's just balancing. Murder Feast. You do not have the forever infamous perk. Targeting your liege or head of faith will make you drop prestige and piety levels respectively, as with Bloody Weddings, so keep that in mind. Characters with good traits, just, compassionate, etc. will also get stressed by engaging in, well, massive murder. You see it right here. You will choose how to murder your honorary guest and their entourage. So this is against the honorary guest and our entourage. Interesting. You can still choose your activity options as in a regular feast, and you will receive lowered amounts of their default rewards, opinion and prestige, but only if you don't murder all of the entourage. In that case, people are a bit traumatized to think how cool of a host you are. Then the most important step, picking your victim. The honorary guest will be your murder target, and you will get the opportunity to kill them and their entourage, or just them. More on this later. Of course, for everyone else, they will appear as honorary guests in the same way as in a regular feast. But for you, you will know. Right. Your intent is also locked in recreation, so the guests don't suspect by seeing a slaughter everyone intent. That makes sense. It wouldn't be a murder feast without a murder target. The host can carefully select their victim and end their life, together with all of their entourage if they wish. But they must stay alert. If someone misses the victim's presence, there may be additional consequences. See, this one I'm like, this makes perfect sense to me. If you fail to do this in a discreet fashion, you will get all the negative effects. If people buy my mercenary story in the Grand Wedding, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I can get away with it, blame it on somebody else. Maybe somebody else is setting me up, etc, etc. I would like that a lot. And here we seem to have it. Once the feast starts, you'll get a pretty straightforward starting event asking you how you want to proceed with this. Do you want to kill your victim and their entourage, which is normally going to be mostly unlanded courtiers, although not always, kill just your victim, or kill your victim and make sure no one knows, which will have a lower chance of succeeding, but also a lower chance of getting caught. That makes perfect sense. Feast. Vile gathering. As the guests file into the Great Hall, I spot them one after the other. Duke Ernst, how dare he step into my house, and his entourage, all enemies of mine. Enemies of the realm. As the servants light the great hearth, I have a sudden epiphany. What if the scourge of their existence could be cleansed all at once? Ernst and his entourage, I want them all gone. I only want him dead. Ernst needs to die, but no one can suspect me, so this is the middle option. Okay. They are all guests in my house. No harm will befall them. I feel like, actually, looking at this now, I'm like, isn't this the exact same selection that we had earlier with the murder feast? Let me just take a look at this. Oh, yeah. So this is like everybody. Do it publicly. Do it secretly. Don't do it at all. This is the same set of selections, isn't it? So I assume you can kill your spouse and get away with it, but as soon as you do more, you won't get away with it. I assume, right? That at least is the way it looks to me. That is actually, I like that better than about the bloody weddings, for sure. Once you decide on the entree, the fest continues with normality. You'll be getting events about how people are drinking, flirting, getting in fights, or just having fun, until the moment of the toast. That's where the massacre happens. The conversation with Duke Ernst couldn't be more amicable. My eyes wander towards the invigorating herbal infusions as he goes on a long lecture on his friends. All the other guests have left, of course. They wouldn't want to interrupt the important matters that my honorary guest wishes to discuss. The poison is tasteless, undetectable. Oof, there he goes. I guess this is when you do it secretly. Nope, actually I'm wrong. Oh, but you do get a secret. So, yeah, you kill his entourage here. Are you kidding me? They all die. Huh. I'm honestly, I'm not sure then. I don't want to say this is good, this is bad. I'm like, I need to wait this one out. I need to check when people will be detected, how they will die, etc, etc. I am super eager to learn about that for sure. From cinders to flames. I assume this is, nope, you get a secret. You are not immediately found out. Interesting. The flames lick the roof and screams echo through the night. I lean my back against the closed door, ignore the horrified faces of my victims, and smile. To allow smoldering resentment to burst into flames is truly the best way to handle the scent. Finally, they are gone. That's an interesting... Yeah, no, I'm super interested to find out more about like how secret you can keep certain things, how guaranteed certain penalties are, and whether they can scale and increase. Interesting stuff. There are 5 different text variations for each of the killing options, so you get all the variation you need while plotting and executing, pun intended, your slaughter for the 15th time. The thematic, however, is always similar. For the full entourage murder, we frame it as an unfortunate fire, or the group gets mysteriously poisoned. If the lady or gentleman prefers a single kill, however, we opt for an unfortunate accident with a knife, or, well, more poison, all in different flavors. These descriptions, it's worth mentioning, also take your traits into account. See, that's what I'm saying. Even if it's unlikely, let's say you have a 5% chance of hiding that you are the guy that did the bloody wedding. I would love if that 5% chance, like, lets me blame somebody else. You know, the rival of one of the people that died, etc. I would like that a lot. They didn't mention it. They only mentioned it here for the feast. I guess it's because in the Grand Wedding they were like, we need to go really, really hard into punishing that. Which isn't wrong. Don't get me wrong here, but yeah, no, I don't know. I would like that to be more varied. More drama should arise, right? Once the work is done, it's time for the cleanup. You show up, lament a bit, and say farewell to the survivors, reaping your rewards. You gain 35 dread. Again, you gain a grim supper for 15 years, and every guest loses opinion because, well, people did die. This character failed to protect the honorary guest at their feast. It's like, did I kill him though? Did I do it? Who did this? Right, and with that, it's all done. Is it? Greetings, Duke Vratislav of Bohemia. I know what you did. Right, and that is a house feud, so basically somebody may have caught wind of this. I wonder whether this is guaranteed. Who knows? Blood for the Blood Guard. For those of you who purchased Northern Lords, we have updated the Grand Blood to work with a new activity system. All the content, costs, and rewards have remained untouched. While we haven't added any new content here, however, the new system allows for additional choices when planning a Blood. Yeah, perfectly fine, right? You organize it. I think we can skip this. You can invite different people. You can ensure that different folks show up. Sacrifice follow right here. Opinion and popular gain. Opinion gain with Asatrons will be as high as it can be. Subjects that do not endorse human sacrifice will lose opinion and popular opinion. Major piety gain. Optionally, you may designate a chief sacrifice. We already all know this, except you wouldn't choose this here, you would just choose this in an event, then tag a sacrifice, and it would work exactly the same way. Nothing too surprising here. As for what happens during the bloat, nothing has changed on that front. Sacrifices occur, opinion is gained or lost, and the guards are pleased. We haven't added any new event content, save a small set of pulse actions and the new conclusion screen with the activity log. Our primary focus here was to better tie some of the smaller activities to the map and transition them to the new system. Right. Perfectly fine. Unre played mournful music. Look at you, playing mournful music. And then here we have a different screen. Seems cool. Really neat. Nothing wrong with this. Grand Rite, it's a very similar story. I'll tell you this right now. They didn't add anything. They just added these minor sort of additional events. You're locked into your intent here, of course. Then here you admired the moon. You can do that now, so there you go. And yeah, that is basically it. Except meet the peers, I guess. There's a bit more going on here because that was... I mean, you didn't travel, you didn't do any of these things. Now, there are a slew of categories to choose from when it comes to inviting fellow children. You can choose as many or as few as you like, and yet they will travel to your realm capital. Before that, I want to say it was entirely random, right? It was entirely random, so this is significantly better. I wonder how many you can actually invite. Every small lord and lady in the realm to enjoy themselves in the company of other children is a liberating and fun experience. That is so cute. While transitioning Meet the Peers to the new system, we did run into a weird issue where adults would pop up at the activity, ending up with a situation like this. How do you do, fellow kids? I assume it basically like just puts them into an event. It's like, he threw a rock into the lake, and he threw it really far. I can't do that. And it's like a 50-year-old man just standing there throwing rocks into the lake. We haven't added any new events content for now, but I'm sure this activity will play some role in our upcoming event pack, Wards and Wardens, so be on the lookout. For now, we have added pulse actions and the whole activity gets the new system interface complete with a conclusion screen and activity log. Nothing too surprising here. Obviously, we see different folks. Adele isn't doing so hot, but what can you do? And then it's over. Of days to come and tales to be told. This concludes our dev diary for today. I hope you find the venue to your liking, the decorations tasteful and the content meaty. Stay tuned for next week's exciting news on accolades and knights. My conclusion here is very straightforward. I think this is all cool stuff. I wonder whether the balancing around the Great Wedding, or rather the Bloody Wedding, is perfect. It could be harsher. It could potentially make it so that you have a chance, a tiny chance, of not directly being detected. Because even if a disaster occurs, does that mean automatic excommunication? I guess it's so rare, maybe it has to. Honestly, I'm not too set on that. The most important takeaway for me is, man, Royal Court sure seems a whole lot less meaty now, huh? Especially after this, taking this into consideration, I can only yet again appeal. I would like it if the Royal Court got a revamp, maybe got a few more throne rooms as well, but be that as it may, that's clearly not in the cards right now. Let me know what you think and how you feel, especially, of course, about the Murder Feast, about the Bloody Wedding. These are crass examples, but if you can't do crass things, if you play a crass character, then what is it all worth? What is it all for, right? I will leave it right here. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you later, alligator.